What led me to that moment is saying, I am not able to do this on my own. If I had help, how good would that be? But the emotional journey is the same. The context is different. At the end of the day, you don't come to work and you leave your personal self behind and you just show up and now you are a different Khalid, work Jad.
Exactly.
You are who you are. You can't outsource your standards to other people. I genuinely believe that certain business values are superior to other business values. And so it's not because we are Washmen that we're gonna do it better than those laundries. It was really grounded in the fact that we are actually not different. We are the same as everyone else, but what's different about us is the way we think. You're always gonna be running away from failure. You're always gonna be chasing success. So long as the goalposts keep moving, the element of dissatisfaction is always there.
Jad Halaoui is an engineer turned entrepreneur and the co-founder of Washmen, one of the UAE's leading on-demand laundry and dry cleaning platforms. After starting his career in the oil and gas sector with Schlumberger, he made the leap into the startup world, building a tech-enabled service company from the ground up. In this episode, we dive into his founder's journey, lessons from scaling a services business in the Middle East, and what it takes to innovate in traditional industries. Did you know that 44% of podcasts stop after episode 3? So that means all that time, energy, and money is just wasted and you never get to truly see the benefits of podcasting. So if you want your show to stay alive and healthy, you can book a call in the link below and let's get started today.
Thank you for having me.
So guys, for the people who don't know, Jad and I got connected through my cousin Raja, obviously, big shout out Raj. And obviously, Jad is the co-founder and COO of Washmen. Guys, if you're living in the UAE, either you've used it or if you haven't, you're missing out. And this is going to change your life. It's the best laundry service I've ever used in my life. I've used apps before, but really you guys, mashallah, have taken it to a different level and have become like an industry standard here. You guys are really pushing, I think, the limits of tech, especially in this space, and the way you guys with the bar tags and tag this and creating that whole transparency for clients, I think is what makes you guys very unique. But what I wanted to dive into today, Jad, is your journey as an entrepreneur building Washmen. Obviously, you want to talk about some of the emotional, psychological things that we're kind of just talking about off camera too, that have played up in this journey.
Yeah.
But before we get into all that, Jad, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself and we'll take it from there.
So where do we begin? So I'm Lebanese originally, grew up in Saudi Arabia for quite a big chunk of my life. Then eventually I moved to Canada where I did university and trying to see, man, where do I want to tell the story? So yeah, I mean, listen, grew up between Saudi and Canada, did university there. And then I think the foundational moment of my career would have been around, I would call it the second or third year of university. At some point, I remember very clearly when I was sitting in a house I had just moved into in Montreal, an apartment that was quite expensive in rent that my father had paid for, and I just kind of realized how, like, I'm going to call it blessed today. I don't think that was the language I had then, but spoiled is the way I internalized it at that point in time. I felt super guilty, and I just remember sitting down, looking at the floor, the parquet floor, and saying, you know, like, for this to be worth it, for my father for me to justify and accept that I've allowed myself to have my father spend so much on me and to have even dared ask, I better make something out of this. And so, you know, I felt spoiled and I felt guilty for asking for too much and for living a life that was above the standard that many other students in university had. And so in that moment, there was an emotion that I sought. And I remember writing down the note, but unfortunately, iCloud wasn't as good as it is today, so I never synced up. But the language goes something like this. Like, I want, and I think it's the wrong word to use, but I wanted the quote-unquote arrogance. Again, I was less than 21 years old, guys. I was immature. But the arrogance that comes from being someone who has overcome many difficult challenges that no one else has overcome. We go back to what we were discussing off camera, which is the pursuit of things that you can collect that no one can compete with you on. And I thought that a very difficult career in a very demanding industry, whether that, at that point I didn't know what it would be. I was an engineer studying engineering, and I just wanted something very challenging and very difficult, and I wanted to work super hard. But I never knew what that would look like. I never knew really. In second year university, beginning of third year, I didn't imagine what a career like that would look like. I just knew that I had a very easy childhood in Saudi Arabia. We had help at home. Didn't have a driver, but we had drivers from the company that we could use. Took a driver to school every day. Lived in compounds and gated communities. Quite a sheltered life. And then, going to university in Canada, you realize how
the real world
is, and the challenges that you're going to face. And I thought to myself, if I went back to Saudi, where my parents were at the time, if I took the quote-unquote easy way out, it would be a missed opportunity to learn something harder, which is, fend for yourself, feed yourself with the money you make on your job, but also go to an environment that is quite challenging. And when the opportunity came to work in oil and gas, a good friend of mine's brother was working in can I cuss or no?
Of course.
Yeah. Buttfuck Nowhere, Alberta. We called it Buttfuck Nowhere, Alberta. And my friend, my business partner now called it Addet Kahraba, which is like your phone number is a DO number.
Yeah, basically.
It's like a number that no one's ever imagined. So I heard this story of working at 3 or 4 in the morning in like -30. And I think only in ways that someone who felt inadequate would, I thought that was an attractive proposition, mainly because I was worried about how soft I was and how, in fact, it was true compared to other people who were in Canada, who were paying for their own tuition, working 2 jobs, day, night, serving pizzas while studying to become engineers, which I didn't have to do any of. And even though I was a good student, I was doing quite well, but on the life side of the equation, I hadn't achieved as much as I would have hoped to achieve at that age, or as much as others were achieving. So I thought that the pursuit of a cauldron, a very difficult experience, would be something worth pursuing. So I got into oil and gas. I applied, I got in. Even the way I even applied was in line with that tenacity. I applied, they didn't come back to me. I applied again online, they didn't get back to me. And then I went to the I forgot what they call them, but career things.
Like a career advisor.
Fairs,
the fairs. Yeah.
So I went to a career
university
fair.
shit.
I saw this lady, Jennifer, who was the one who gave me the opportunity, the hiring manager. Spoke to her for a while, gave her my CV. And then the next day when I went to do my interview, I had the same conversation that we just had about having an easy life and wanting to pursue something difficult with the hiring manager. Anyway, got the job. Flew to Alberta. Interview was very interesting, but I got the job. And for the next 4.5, 5 years of my life at that point, it was quite difficult. It was...
You're working on like oil rigs in the deserts and like in all these different places too, right?
Not the desert, I would say, but definitely in the middle of nowhere in Alberta, meaning small towns that for people who had been living in an urban life in university
it's a big shift.
And in
it's
school,
tough.
It was a big difference.
Yeah.
So I worked in small towns of about 3,000 people, 10,000 people, 60,000 people. Quite far from any urban center.
Wow.
So Calgary and Edmonton were the closest place I had been to. And at some point I was in a city called Fort McMurray, which is not that far. I forgot if it's about 6 or 8 hour drive from Edmonton. But it's a 60,000 people town usually. And in winter when they can actually drill for oil because everything's frozen over, I think it goes up to like a few 100,000 people. And
wow.
So working in remote locations, working under high stress conditions. First, stress in terms of physical stress because you haven't slept well, or for whatever reason the job took longer than it needed than you anticipated it would because of malfunctioning or whatever else could have happened. So you end up finding yourself in this place where you are physically exhausted, but there's a lot of demands made of you mentally and psychologically, and you need to perform.
Sounds like entrepreneurship, huh?
Right. It was a good precursor to entrepreneurship, where you just feel like everything is going against you and physically you're exhausted, but mentally you're expected to stay sharp. And so that's why I said that was what prepared me for the challenges that came in this career.
Makes a lot of sense.
I think it's very common, you speak to my co-founder, he's an investment banker. They had similar stories. The main difference is that in their case, the nature of the job was that it was in an office. The nature of our job was that it was outdoors. And I think the element of the physical hardship,
it adds something.
It adds to the fact that I think you're more willing to tolerate pain.
Of course. Yeah. It's much harder.
Let's say doing it in an office where, you still get the comfort of a chair, you still get the comfort of something else. But, the physical element of it did help me out in quite a few junctions of this journey. We were discussing earlier in COVID, like I had literally let myself balloon from 92 kilos, like 120 something, in order to absorb the stress. I mean, I do eat, I'm an emotional eater. I absorbed the stress physically and just kept going at it because I knew what the priority was, and that was the company, its survival. And when we achieved that, I said, okay, now I can shift focus back to myself and calibrate, because I had gone to a position where I was not happy or comfortable in my own body or self at that point. So that job was a good preparation. 4 years and a half. Worked offshore. It sounds much more difficult than a land job or like a place where you work in small towns in Alberta, but it was actually quite a bit easier. You do take helicopters to work. You do work in the middle of the North Sea. At that point, I was in Norway. But it was actually harder to work on land, mainly because you were the one doing the driving. You were the one doing all the relationship management with your client on site. You were the one, you didn't have any help or a second shift. So sometimes it was not uncommon to stay awake for 40 hours, 50 hours. I think the longest shift I did was 54 hours.
Fucking hell,
no
bro.
sleep.
Holy shit.
So you get to that point. Offshore, the limit is 12 hours. And if you go above 12 hours, you're at risk of not being insured.
Oh,
and
shit.
so the client tells you, go back to your room. We don't want you staying out longer. So the land experience was quite difficult. And it set me up for, again, being able to take pain beyond what I thought I needed to take, right? And so that was the foundation of ultimately leaving that job. I mean, I describe it now as if it was something that I accepted willingly time and time again. No, I didn't. I mean, one of the funniest things we used to joke about, my roommates and I, my colleagues and I, was that in Schlumberger you dream of the day you quit. Okay. And you come up with all these scenarios of how you, like the most ridiculous way for you to quit. It's because it is that painful. And at some point, I remember in 2013, I had just come back from Brazil. Rami, my co-founder, and I had done a trip to Brazil. And, I was on Copacabana Beach, 41 degrees, 42 degrees or something. I forgot what day of the week that was. Must have been a Friday or Saturday. And we're sitting down right after the new year, enjoying life. Life is good. Then I go back to the hotel. I'm sweating because it's super hot. And I don't have time to shower because we've checked out. And I start my trek back to Canada. It was meant to be Rio, Denver, Calgary, but that didn't work out that way. So we went Rio, Sao Paulo, Chicago, Denver, Calgary. And what was meant to be a, let's say, 18, 20-hour journey took 32 hours.
That's fucked.
I managed to get 5 hours of sleep before being woken up earlier than I was meant to be woken up. And go on a job, 42 hours on the first job, negative 29 degrees Celsius. My head is peeling from the change. Like I had suntan.
It's just like, it's crisping off. Yeah.
My head is peeling. I'm freezing at negative 29. Equipment malfunction. Anyway, sort that out. Drive 3-4 hours back after the job. Fall asleep. Repeat that again. This time it was about 54 hours. Then again, finish that. Many things went wrong. Like that was a week where everything went wrong.
So for a year, you were there doing this for like about four and a half
years. You got it.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Rami, your co-founder, is an investment banker. One of the questions I had is interesting when you make those comparisons, like, oh, mine was hard, but had a physical element, and his was a little bit different, more of an office vibe and so on.
Very difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the stakes were different.
Exactly. That's also true.
Reporting to clients with billions of dollars.
That's true. That's very true. But when you joined Washmen, because I remember you said you left and you were looking for something different. You weren't sure you wanted to do. And what was it about? Because with Washmen, correct me if I'm wrong, you started as an investor and then you became the co-founder. So and what was it about Rami specifically as a founder that you're like, he's the guy that I want to do this with?
Right.
Because we have a lot of friends but not necessarily we'd be the best people to work together.
Right. So to answer the first part, I was invited as an investor. I never really invested. By the time, between being invited to invest and actually being invited to join him as a co-founder, it was 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
It was quite
accelerated.
Yeah, it was quite accelerated.
Yeah, fair.
And by the time he invited me to the time I left my job, it was less than a week. And then, within 3 weeks, I was in Dubai. So he told me to join him around early March, mid-March, and I was in Dubai by early May.
Okay.
And so what it was about him, we'd gone to high school together, we'd gone to university together. He's quite resilient, he's ambitious, and he's relentless. And when you have someone with those characteristics who's also quite creative, intelligent, you tell yourself, well, that's someone I'd like to work with. And the fact that he came from a financial background helped and operational background. So he'd worked in investment banking and private equity and at Uber, and one of the earlier guys in Uber in the region. It kind of gave him the backbone to be the person who led the technology drive of Washmen in the early days. So the narrative made sense. I really had come in as just purely the ops guy at that point. I would say my knowledge of technology was quite thin. I believe he complemented me in terms of, again, personality traits, in terms of temperament.
And it sounds
very
like
different temperament, right?
Sounds like work ethic too.
Yeah, the work ethic was there, right? So that's where we come back into the oil and gas and investment banking. Like, you have this intense job on both sides of the aisle. The only difference is, like, okay, you do it in an office, I do it outdoors. That's the main difference. But the emotional journey, again, back to that conversation we had offline earlier, but the emotional journey is the same. The context is different, but the quote-unquote suffering you experience in trying to rationalize why do I let myself go through this is the same, and we'd had many conversations about it. And I think both of our capacities to take pain are higher than average.
Okay.
He'd gone through a few personal circumstances that I watched him go through and even come out on the other side thriving. And when you see someone going through that, you kind of say, yeah, well, I'm happy to go on a journey along with them.
Yeah, because they've not only, it's not only proved to you, but they've proved it to themselves. You know what I'm saying? That I can overcome whatever this obstacle is, whatever was going on. You mentioned earlier that you grew up when you felt like you had a very comfortable life. So I share that sentiment too. Like, I live a life, alhamdulillah, I tell my parents all the time, I'm like, I didn't deserve what you guys gave me. Like, I really was spoiled, to use your words. And so if it was my kid, it would be very different. It's going to be a rule. But everyone, I think, says what they say. Now, what was interesting with you is listening to your story now with the oil and gas and stuff. So you've said, as you got older, you resented that you had that life and you wanted struggle and you wanted hardship. You wanted to experience that, which is why, that led you down the oil and gas route, because it's a very demanding job, very difficult. But at the same time, you've said, because I watched you on a podcast, you said, a lot of people also over romanticize that struggle of doing it alone and you don't need help. And you've talked about how you have an executive coach that I've been working with now for 7 years. So what made your mindset shift from that guy in the oil and gas days who just grind, need to struggle to be like, you know what? Why don't I get some help on this and make things, a little bit easier for me?
Right. You mentioned the word resent. It wasn't that I resented it because I just felt guilty for having it. I felt undeserving.
Okay,
you used that word. I felt undeserving.
Undeserved, yeah.
Certainly not when I was a kid, but I certainly felt that it made me ill-prepared for the real world.
100%,
And so the only way to adjust for that was to adopt the grind mentality to prove something to myself.
Yes.
And then you kind of get into this entrepreneurship journey and you start working on it, and then you realize that there's no limit to striving. And that if you're always in a constant state of striving for something different, something better, and if you have been unlucky enough to have the perfectionist bug in you, where you are obsessive about every detail until you've perfected it, because that is the only way you can measure if you've done a good job or not. French system education is that, right? It's like 20 out of 20 is possible. You need to do this, you need to do that.
Yeah.
Work a certain way, study a certain way, strive to be perfect effectively. I mean, all these behaviors are behaviors that served me quite well. But at some point, I got to a point where I contrasted the experience I had in oil and gas, where I talked to you about the grind. But I didn't talk to you about the fact that I had almost a month and a half, 2 months off every summer, where there was sometimes every 2 weeks you take a week off, sometimes you take 2 weeks off. And you had the time to internalize the lessons that you were learning. And then, despite all that hardship, and, we were talking about the story before you asked me about Rami, but I had to, after all that hardship, I had to Google how to quit my job. Like, how do you write a resignation letter? But then I stayed on board. And it's because I did have the time few months after those difficult moments to reflect on what is it internally that I need to reconfigure or reconcile or rework in order for me to keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, was that the right decision? Who knows? But I had that time. In entrepreneurship, you don't. And at the same time, not only are you like dealing with your own internal battle, there are external realities that are much bigger that only you and your co-founder can take care of. And it's quite a lonely journey because even though, we're married, you might live in the same home as someone. You might talk to them every day, but they're going through an internal battle journey story that you completely miss out on. And same thing with your co-founder. They're going through their own things, their own set of challenges that they can't bring up to you because they don't even comprehend them, and you're going through that too. And so you feel quite lonely and isolated in your struggle, even though you're sharing it with someone like that's building the business with you.
That's very interesting that you felt that even with it, because I feel that like personally because I'm a solopreneur, but it was interesting that even with a co-founder, you can still experience those feelings.
I mean, you experience that with a partner.
True.
Right?
Yeah,
with
true,
a wife. So I felt that way. And then at some point we had opened up too many fronts and we were doing quite a bit. Too many fronts is not necessarily a judgment on was it actually more than required. It was just that we needed to open that many fronts as we transitioned from a business that outsourced laundry to a business that in-housed everything, technology and laundry operations. And so the gist of it is, the story that I tell, which is that at some point, World Cup 2018, I'm walking on the street in Beirut. We had just opened a software engineering office there, a tech office there. And we were still setting up that office. And I'm just backpack, 8 p.m. or like 7 p.m., walking on Jamaica to go watch the England versus Tunisia game. And I just recalled a podcast that a friend of mine had shared with me with a guy called Jerry Colonna. And I just opened it. And I said, why am I even listening to this? Like, I actually need this service. I need the help. So I went to the website, reboot.io at that point. And reboot.io, they requested that I fill up a form. Instead of watching the game, I sat down and I filled up the entire form on my phone, which doesn't make sense when you're typing that much, but it took about an hour and a half.
Wow.
I wrote about all the challenges I was experiencing, which was like, hey, I feel disconnected from 1, my co-founder, 2, my wife, 3, at that point, my girlfriend, fiance, 3, myself, 4, I can't enjoy things, 5, I ruminate too much, and so on and so on. And then the worst one was the way all of this was experienced was this is what triggered it. It's like I experience heart palpitations from vibrations, from cell phone vibrations that are imaginary, even when my phone is in another room. And so when I experienced that physically, I knew that level of anxiety required help.
Yeah.
And I was not ready yet to accept that I needed a psychologist or a therapist, call it whatever the right word is. So I said, okay, this is all work related, of course, as all entrepreneurs would say. Yeah, must be a work thing. And so I started speaking to an executive coach. And I mean, we did manage quite a bit of years before I saw a therapist, 4 years. And we worked on all those things bit by bit. So like, what is the weight of expectations? Why do you experience them? Where does that come from? And so on and so on and so on. And then eventually when we kind of like worked through most of them, it's like, hey, listen, the challenges you're experiencing are not necessarily professional. At the end of the day, you don't come to work and you leave your personal self behind and you just show up and now you are a different Khalid, work Shad.
Exactly.
You are who you are.
Yeah.
And you carry your personal challenges into your work. And so he's like, listen, I think you should speak to a psychologist. And at that point, reached out to a friend, hey, who recommends someone, and I met someone who recommended me to the psychologist I used to see. I haven't seen her in quite some time. Her name is Thuraya Kanafani, HRIC. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anyone who was more suited for my personal style and the way I work.
You need someone like that, though.
Right.
Like, super important that your therapist or your coach is a person that you believe you have that relationship with, and that has you as the client on the other side feel they have your best interests at heart. And you've said the joke in your family is that you have like 1,000 coaches. I'm exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know, in the last year, I've had a YouTube coach, I have an executive coach, communication coach, conflict coach, just coaches left and right. And what you've said is why, like, pay the thing that I got to is like pay for someone else's 10,000 hours.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And although it might be painful and expensive at times, and you know, you're taking on, I believe you're also taking on as like a commitment that I have some accountability now. I'm going to pay a lot for this thing, so I better, you know, go down and do it. So if I came to you, I'm like, Jad, you know, like, I'm thinking about getting a coach, but like, you know, I don't know, is it useful? Have you found the thing? What has coaching done for you? How significant has this executive coach, for example, that you've had for 7 years, been on everything you've like gotten
So
so far?
I'll segue into this last question that you asked me, which is what made me decide that I'm not going to be on my own?
Yes, exactly.
And so this kind of ties directly into that question, which is, at the end of the day, you're going through many, many battles, and you're opening up many fronts when you're trying to build a business or just trying to live life in general. And there are certain things that you are the most suitable person to do. You have the expertise, you have the knowledge, and only you can do that job very well. But there are certain things where you need to identify those domains where someone else has more experience, more knowledge, and more reference points. They've worked with many people like you, and they've worked on the same problems that you've faced, because you're not special. Your journey, we just discussed it, we just had that moment now. Your journey as a solopreneur is not that different from an entrepreneur or from other solopreneurs or from a CEO who took over a business that was floundering and has to save it in order for them to like make their fortune. Very similar circumstances and context create that. And so it was what led me to that moment is saying, I am not able to do this on my own. If I had help, how good would that be? And so the way I see it is you're actually hiring someone. You mentioned that you're paying them, therefore you have accountability. I actually don't see it that way. I'm paying them to do a job for me. And that job is to get me to see what I need to see. So it's not the right language to use to say to use them, because you're not really using them, but you're using their services
to guide you
in order for you to get what you want out of it.
Yes.
And so when you have that mentality, it's kind of like you go from this perspective of, oh, they're helping me and I'm so lucky to have them, to actually saying, no, I'm paying for a service. I have expectations of my work with these people, of the work that they make me do, not the work that they do for me, because they don't do anything for you. And I'm willing to put in the hours in order to get this job. But at the same time, if I'm not seeing that the quality on the other side is good, then I need to say, one, what can I do different? And then once you've gone through a few iterations of that, if you're still not satisfied, you just say, I need someone different.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, okay, executive coach, great. I kept seeing value week in, week out.
What was the biggest value that you were getting from him?
It was the ability to disconnect my perspective from my experience. Meaning, call the experience the facts, call the perspective the subjective interpretation of those facts. And I realized that the facts were all good?
All good,
yeah. So the facts were the same. And if I worked with a coach on understanding what led me to interpreting those in a specific way, I would be able to just come to different conclusions.
Yeah.
And change the way I react or the way I deal with certain situations. That was really it.
Was it taking into consideration?
Practically speaking, because I know people, all these generalities are not very useful, but practically speaking, for example, David comes to me and says, hey, Jad, I need 1, 2, 3 from you. Okay, why do you need that and when do you need it by? I need this today, and if not, I'm going to be able to fail on my job and so on. And then, okay, 1 second. Let me, instead of feeling guilty and like I need to please you, because that's my default state, I'm going to question you. I'm going to say, not David asks for so much from me, and I'm not able to meet the requirements. So you either develop a relationship of resentment with David, or you develop a feeling of inadequacy because you're not able to support David. It becomes, wait, let's deal with the facts. Okay, fine. You have your feelings. They're there. Don't identify with them, experience them, but keep going with more objective fact collection. That's a small thing, but it sounds so obvious. But then it wasn't when you have 50 other things that you're dealing with. The default state is, let me deal with this David thing as quickly as possible because I have a customer whose clothes we damaged.
Yeah.
Or, or I have a $1 million tender I need to get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're just in this state of internal tension of where do I allocate my time? And funny enough, when you don't deal with those internal matters, you end up ruminating so much and you have so many open loops. And so the ability to work with an executive coach gave me the tools to pretty much understand how I best deal with these open loops, ingest them, resolve them, and move on to the next thing without carrying over the burden of an open loop. Mm. So that's practically what it does.
Yeah.
And then, I did that. And then eventually I learned, wait a second, if I can do that with work, I can also do that with, I took up paddle when things were much better and I kind of grasped the work challenge. I wanted to learn paddle. I went straight to a coach. And I said, I need to be always in a state of learning. Went to a coach. Mm-hmm. So the idea is, and then eventually, psychologist, and then, just
once that door opens, you're in. That's it.
And then you realize, but at the same time, I want to give a warning sign to a word of caution, is that it sometimes becomes too easy to say, I need someone else's help or I can't move. And so on the other side of it is you need to retain that drive internally,
that ownership,
to try to do things on your own and to take it as far as you can before seeking someone else's help.
Yes.
And because only by doing so, and this is my character, only by doing so do I know exactly where the help is needed. Rather than outsourcing everything, which I believe sometimes over-delegating is an abdication of responsibility. You want to find out the areas that you want to run on your own and develop on your own, and then the areas that you ask for help in. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with everything my executive coach says. In fact, I don't also agree with everything my psychologist says. But I need to listen, I need to understand, I need to reflect, and then I need to say, okay, what may be, if I disagree with this, what may be true about what they're saying? Mm-hmm. What may be true, and in what ways is my predisposition making me reject them? Am I being defensive? Am I being, reflexive? Am I being logical? What is it? And then in the ways that they're true, you kind of figure out, you reconcile that with yourself. And in the ways that what they're saying is not right, you say, okay, well, that's because I see the world this way, and I will honor the way I look at the work. I will respect that. I'm just going to say, I'm not lesser than. Because that's the tendency also when you seek too much help, is that eventually you start feeling like, yes, you're big and you're doing great, but you're always not enough on your own. Mm-mm. So the other side of it is you need to kind of just find a way to think or do things that make you feel like you're enough. Yeah. And maintain that. And it's a muscle. It's a muscle that you need to maintain.
That's exactly the word. When you frame it as a muscle, it takes away a lot of like the hecticness or complexity around it. Because it's like, a muscle, I go to the gym, I do this, this muscle grows. If I respond to this situation in this way, boom, that's my training. So in this work with an executive coach, because I had a similar experience in that they would just challenge like you said, challenge my perspectives. They'd be like, maybe like, I don't believe you. What do you mean you don't believe me? Why don't you believe me? Then this is my story. And I'm like, you're telling me the what, you're not telling me the how, you're not telling me the why. So just having a soundboard of someone, like you said, who has experience, who's done it, who will push those buttons for you, points out a lot of your blind spots, which I really, really appreciate. And then you took that into the work, what you and Rami have been doing over the last 10 years and I'm sure there are many instances over that time of building Washmen where you wanted to go this way, he wanted to go that way, and you guys come together and you figure out how that works. But what was the, turning point? What was the point that Washmen went from like, okay, we're just a laundry business, we're adding some tech, to like this powerhouse that it is right now?
Insourcing the operations. So you can outsource a lot of jobs to be done, but you can't outsource the core competency of the business. In the beginning in 2015, we thought we were going to be the quote unquote Uber for laundry. That was quite a popular term back then. Within 2 weeks of launching, we realized, wait a second, this is not a logistics business. This is a laundry business. And it's funny because within 2 weeks, we knew that one day we were going to have our own laundry. But at the same time, we were conflicted because when you're fundraising as an asset-light business and you're telling the world, wait a second, I'm going to do like a shape-shifting experience where I'm going to go into a fully vertically integrated business. it's kind of like I'm not going to say dead on arrival, but it just didn't feel right. Let's put it that way. So we kept the outsourced business model. And then we raised our Series A, and within a few months, we built our wash and fold facility. Why wash and fold, not the full experience? One, cheaper, less infrastructure, only electricity is required. The experience is quite simple, but it was also a novel product. And the market wasn't able to deliver it to us. The outsourced market wasn't able to deliver it to us at one, the quality expected, the margin expected, and therefore the price point that we can charge customers that was attractive for them to outsource that operation.
Okay.
So we in-housed it. We traveled to India, to the US for that specific service. Those were the two countries. Saw how it was done in India, incredible. Saw the scale in the US, great. Found a way to merge it here and make sense of it. We managed to drop the price point from 79 to 49 and still maintain 40% margins at that point. Now we do it with much higher quality, much more sophistication. So we charge more and we have lower margins, funnily enough. We charge 50% more, but we have lower margins. And we said, okay, we've proven that we can operate a facility. And now we told the world, guys, look at this. No one in the world is able to get good retention if they're outsourcing. We need to in-house. And if we want to deliver the best possible customer experience, we need to own everything. The underlying mechanisms that deliver that experience.
The whole supply chain.
Right. And so we had already, so first step was in-housing the drivers. 2 was in-housing the wash and fold. 3 was in-housing the dry cleaning operation. And we thought that if we did that right, we could actually build a state-of-the-art facility that is a proof of concept of what it would look like to do this elsewhere in the world. Because at that point we still believed in growing internationally and scaling globally. We don't believe that anymore. We're quite focused on the UAE at the moment, but at that point we knew that building this and doing this right and making sure we solved the experience of laundry through a digital first experience for customers where the storefront was a digital one and you reverse engineer the full experience backwards into the factory, whereas usually the way most laundries operate, the factory has an optimal way of working and then the store, it tells the store this is the way we work, and then the store interfaces with the client based on those parameters. In our case, we actually said, wait, we've been outsourcing this for 4 years. And we know now all the limitations of all these different laundries, and we've seen how each of them, by physically setting up a laundry in one way, they now experience problems in another way. So we said, okay, let's just build this way in a way where it's dummy-proof. It's extremely inefficient, which is why we weren't making much money in the beginning. It's extremely inefficient, but it is so easy to operate that the likelihood of not saying delivering good quality, the likelihood of not delivering bad quality is a lot lower. So meaning, you kind of in your system you build a very inefficient system where failure points are less likely to happen.
Gotcha.
Rather than building an efficient system that has figured out all the workflows where you deliver quality. So we started off with that way, and over time we had RFIDs, tags on garments. We had digital experiences for everyone in the laundry to enter the information. We automated the billing, and then by starting to collecting all of this data on the garments you wore, the cleaning programs we had, when things were ready on time and when they weren't, we started having a lot of information about all the things that were yielding what we call issues. I mean, it's
bottlenecks, I guess?
Issues.
Sure.
Just things that were, whether visible to the customer or not, could lead to a bad customer experience.
Gotcha.
For example, something you guys don't hear about from us, but we know every order that was delivered late, even if you didn't complain about it, and we track that. Naturally, of course you do that. But also, every single time a stain is not removed, and we tell you that it wasn't removed, we still consider that an incident, meaning it is a defect in our process that a stain cannot be removed. Sometimes not all stains are removable, by the way, but we know that it's a precursor to potentially a complaint. And so we know if that stain was reported or not. And so we look at if we didn't action it, we need to know why. So anyway, all these things, we started having the data on them. And then eventually we said, okay, let's focus on each one. What is the most critical thing? And the moment that you actually saw our operations start turning around and really getting better is the moment we realized that there's a concept we call pending items in laundry. They're pending, meaning they're not ready on time. You give us an order, you expect us to deliver them in the full order in 2 days. Now, for 99% of items, that's a reasonable expectation.
Okay.
For 1% of items, that's an unreasonable expectation because a pillow will not dry in time.
Gotcha.
A feather pillow needs to be removed. You need to clean the outside on its own. You need to clean the feather. You need to clean the feathers on its own if you want to do the job right. And then you have to put it back together. You have to give it time to dry, and so on and so on and so on. Same thing with duvets. Same thing with curtains. You clean them a lot slower. Sofa covers are more prone to shrinkage because of their exposure. So they need more time.
Damn, man, you've had to learn so much about every single product. It's like a science in itself. You know what I'm saying? A curtain, a ball, a carpet, everything's different.
I'll tell you a story now about a wool garment that a friend of mine talked to me about a few days ago. But so when we built the engine, the factory, and we built the data collection engine, and then we built now we collected the data. Wait a second, you need to report on it. Not that easy. So then we figured out that we needed to create an engine internally where the information collected needed to be easily reported on, and you didn't need the engineering team or a data analyst. So I actually learned Power BI myself.
Oh, shit.
And I built all the dashboards on my own in the beginning. And then we were lucky enough that we had a colleague of ours that was ambitious. He was in customer service, the first customer service hire. His name is Andrew. We were lucky that he had taken up a keen interest in data and business intelligence. And he learned business intelligence on his own. And then he resigned because he wanted to pursue it. And we're like, wait a minute, we didn't know that you wanted to do business intelligence. Like we have that internally, and I'm happy to invest in you and work together with you to a point where you become our business intelligence guy. And he had a keen knowledge of the entire business, the full operation, because he was serving customers for years, from the outsourced days to the in-house days. Thankfully, he stayed on board, and he became the data reporting guy, and he became a critical person in the entire journey. And so on that subject of pending items, we had all the data collection checkpoints. So we knew exactly why things were not reaching the final stage on time. And then we just established a protocol where every single week, the protocol is called 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's a subject it's a methodology we borrowed. We implemented from a book called the 4 Disciplines of Execution. And the idea is quite simple. You need to have what they call a wildly important goal. In Jim Collins' terminology is the BHAG, the big hairy audacious goal, right? And then on top of that, you need to have a scorecard where you know quickly within one glance whether we're winning or losing. Then you need to have a cadence of accountability, meaning you meet every single week only for 20 minutes, and then you, in that, review the commitments that are being made, and those commitments need to be, 1, granular, enough that anything you complete within a week, they need to be completable within a week, and they need to directly impact the score that you're looking at on that week. So effectively, you start implementing very small tasks that move the needle bit by bit.
Yeah.
But then the whole part of it is that the team is multidisciplinary, meaning to move the number of what we call pending items, which was at 11% of orders, or only 1.1% of items, because we call it 10 items per order.
Sure.
1.1% of orders were having items were having a delay, leading to 11% of orders not being needing a second delivery, which is quite expensive. That means you pay 50% more on logistics for 11% of your orders because you have to do another delivery. We got logistics, laundry, customer service, business intelligence, and in customer service, there's also CCTV. So anyway, we established that team, and then every single person, every single week had to do one commitment. And within, I'd say 5 months, we had brought that number down from 11% to less than 2%.
Wow, mashallah.
And it was through the, death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
We went at it with 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty of that methodology. But had we not built the factory, that would have been impossible. You can't outsource your standards to other people. No one who you will outsource your laundry to, as in Dubai, is willing to do this kind of intense work and work with you that closely or that
100%,
because it's not their core business. And so we did that. We reduced. Now pending items sit at less than 1%, of which more than 80% are transfers. Let's say from wash and fold to to the clean and press service, or from clean and press to the finery service. So these are inevitable.
Yeah.
And 20% are avoidable, but of those problems are avoidable, but it still remains less than 0.2% of orders, not items, so 0.02% of items. So we've done a great job. And the best part of this is that when you have kind of this interdisciplinary team and you have a cadence of accountability, then the manager, myself, is not really needed. All I need to do is be there and make sure that the quality of the commitments being made are actually going to move the needle, and to make sure that the lessons that are there are important, that we don't get into a comfort zone. So the team did a great job, and they did everything. And I remember the moment where we like gave ourselves, we clapped. We go back to joy and celebration, right? Like we looked at this, and I remember at one point, even yesterday, I had that same exact moment where I looked at the number of what we call missing item claims, or the number of times customers claim something is missing. 3 times last week. When you're doing 15,000 plus orders a week, you only get like 3 claims of items going missing, that's incredible. That's just claims. And of those, all 3 were found. And I looked at the guys and I said, guys, I think we deserve to like celebrate. Like, congratulations, you guys have done great work. I don't even chair these meetings anymore. I just check in every now and then. And so the inflection point was building the facility, the beginning, then using all the capabilities that a facility, the facility brings, the data, building the data engine, analysis and reporting, then forming a team that uses that data every single week, and then focusing on the right metrics that lead to a negative customer experience. Because the most important thing in us delivering your items on time is that even if we had reported to you that it's late and it's coming late, you will still have an emotion of anxiety when you think about the service, and you'll always wonder, did they deliver this on time, yes or no? And then you stop trusting us. And we wanted to eliminate all that. And that's why we focus on that target, even though it's not damaged items, because people think, oh, well, are they going to damage my clothes? Like, those initiatives to better quality, we're still running in parallel, but they didn't need intense focus. Whereas items that are not delivered on time, pending items, or missing item claims go hand in hand. Reducing the first leads to a reduction in the second, and you realize that customers stopped complaining about feeling their items were missing because they got used to them always arriving on time. And
once you've set that expectation, like you constantly deliver on it, you're taking, for me as the customer, that anxiety out of it. I know when I do this, even if something goes wrong, mirtah, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm now comfortable because you've given me all the steps and made up for that. You said in the podcast that you just mentioned it now, trust. And you're like, what you're doing or what your job is to create more trust with our customers, right? All these little initiatives, these little optimizations that you've made are all the building blocks that have launched or propelled Washmen, to where it is now. But you said to build trust with clients is counterintuitive sometimes, because you might over-invest. It might not be the smartest, let's say, financial decision to make, like, let's say, invest $200,000 just to make my customers feel a bit better when the ROI isn't significantly there. But from what I understand from you, making those investments in the long term will pay off because your customers will be loyal and they'll appreciate that more.
Right. Funny thing is, we go back to values and principles of business. And I genuinely believe that certain business values are superior to other business values.
Okay.
And the biggest discovery, if you think about Amazon, Costco, is this concept of economies of scales shared. Not with shareholders, with customers. And so what is the true meaning of being customer obsessed? On Costco's side, it's that we won't make more than 15% margin on any product. And no matter how it is, we're going to negotiate with our suppliers to keep that at 15%. With Amazon, customer obsession is we want to make it faster, we want to make it more accurate, and we want to make sure that it's seamless, where you don't worry or you don't have a doubt that Amazon has your best interest in mind. They always come at their problems from that perspective. You hear a lot of people talk about customer obsession, which is what you mentioned right now, trust. Why am I prioritizing trust in a relationship, in a personal relationship? And why are we as a company prioritizing trust in our business relationship with our clients? It's again based on the concept of we're obsessed with the customer. What does that mean? What is their psychology when they interact with us? In what ways may we be falling short of their expectations? How do we generate anxiety within them? And when it comes down to the moment where you need to make a decision. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, the way the world works is now you have to expose it to the elements, the budget. And a lot of people will come and say, okay, wait, well, that's not financially feasible. But the objective is not whether the decision is financially feasible first, or it's not financially optimal. It needs to be feasible, but it doesn't need to be optimal. What we're optimizing for first is
the customer.
How can we build an experience where the number of defects that we produce based on our current capabilities, not our future imagined idealized capabilities, what are the current capabilities we have, and based on those capabilities, what is the system we need to put into place in order to deliver the best customer experience we're capable of delivering today. And that means doing things, buying 2 machines for dry cleaning when you only need half of the one you bought. And it's to say, I need redundancy. Why? Because if I don't have redundancy, I'm going to delay orders. If I'm going to delay orders, customers are not going to be happy. Well, that's the first one. 2 is if I buy 2 dry cleaning machines, then I can make sure that the darks and the colors are cleaned in one and the whites and lights are cleaned in the other. Why? Because we've noticed with all of our dry cleaning partners who only have one dry cleaning machine or who have more than one, but they mix the different clothes, even though it's on different cycles, where they clean the whites in one program and then the darks in another program. The way the dry cleaning machine works is unlike washing machines where the water is flushed down the drain, they reuse their chemical. And if you've just been unlucky enough where, for whatever reason, a button melts, because that happens, and then it dyes the product, then you have a white shirt coming out as pink or gray.
Yeah.
And we don't want to deal with that.
Yeah,
but
true.
we are not better than anyone else.
Yeah.
Our humans are human.
Yeah.
In the same way that every human in every other laundry is human. And so it's not because we are washmen that we're going to do it better than those laundries. The psychological misjudgment that would have happened in this moment is to think that, but we are different. It was really grounded in the fact that we are actually not different. We are the same as everyone else, but what's different about us is the way we think. And so it was really this process of elimination of errors rather than the pursuit of the best equipment or the best this or the best that. It was in what nodes, how many nodes of failure exist in our partners' laundries. Let's identify all of those. And let's design a system in which if we just built simple building blocks, that wouldn't happen. And so buying a conveyor belt, the way we bought it and the way we designed it, also gave us the flexibility to not have delays or mix items together. Of course, we did in the beginning, and then we worked on resolving it over time through one of the processes I discussed with you, different mission. But it was really that, to say, 1 second, this is not optimal, but it is in the best interest for our relationship with our customers. That is putting the customer first.
Yeah.
And I didn't mention that the budget was higher than it needed to be. And of course, whenever we end up in situations where we make decisions that don't prioritize the customer, and then sometimes you do it, not deliberately.
Yeah.
It's
you just think this
you
is
just
the right
forget.
move. Yeah, exactly.
It's the habit. It's
Exactly.
the way we've always done things.
Of course, exactly, 100%.
And you don't ask yourself what may be true about what the customer said. We always ended up paying for, and I always end up regretting it.
Yeah. But look, it's like better than but anyway, it's always a learning experience. Hindsight's always 20/20. It takes a while to also develop that mindset and start putting in the right processes, people, things in place to deliver on that. But what you said was the key thing I took away from that is it all comes down to like your objective, and you work backwards from that. In your case, it was serve the customer and eliminate errors, and then you moved backwards from that and started putting things in place.
Right.
Jad, just want to round off our conversation with I got 3 more questions for you. So the last one's a little bit of a personal one. So
Go ahead.
So what I learned from our podcast today and from the podcast that you spoke on, that failure is something that you have struggled with growing up. It made you not feel like you could belong, made you feel inadequate, something I really resonated to as well. I had a very similar experience, and only until the last couple of years have things, started working on it and doing things in the right way. But it's interesting for someone who not fears failure, who doesn't want to fail so bad because they feel he doesn't belong. You work or have a business that is there's so much logistics, so many things that could go wrong. So my question to you is, what's your relationship with failure now?
I've always been a person motivated by the fear of failure, where I was driven by failure is not an option. Funny enough, that's been a big drive towards the pursuit of excellence, because the mentality was, if I work super hard and I outthink, out-X whatever other person or other system or other business, then I'll be so far from failure that I won't have to deal with it. And I mean, that's quite magical thinking. It doesn't exist, right? But it is a narrative that we tell ourselves. What it does is that it takes away quite a bit of joy and from living, because you're always going to be running away from failure. You're always going to be chasing success.
Yeah.
And so long as the goalposts keep moving, the element of dissatisfaction is always there.
100%.
So my relationship with failure as I evolved over the years, and specifically after working not with the executive coach but with the psychologist, was to kind of realize that the journey is what matters. And silly as it sounds and as cliche as it sounds, there's a reason why these things actually start making sense, or they become, they start occupying a space in the collective consciousness. But failure is just part of the journey. And if you think about it, and if you think about the way we learn, it's literally inevitable that you will fail to do things the right way. And it's a learning opportunity. Not to say that, capital F failure is the same as small f failure. In the sense that I'm not worried about small f failures, meaning damaging a garment, losing an item, being late to a customer. Those are learning opportunities, and you have to assume full responsibility for them. But the capital F failure, meaning where it's a terminal solution, all is gone, nothing is going to work after, that is a concept I still worry about. Today, 550 plus employees in the company, a very well-run machine with a lot of great talent in the company running the business. I still worry about capital F failure. But I kind of realized that it's a signal rather than a reality, meaning that this concern about failure is quite natural. And I just see it, and I've learned to process it as a way to kind of lean into it and say, why do I feel this way? What is it that I believe might lead to a capital F failure? Let me focus on it. I think the capital F failure concept, everyone has it. It has, it lives rent-free in your mind no matter where you are, no matter where you are in your life.
Forever as well. It's there.
For certain personalities like myself, it will live there forever. And if you kind of realize that maybe the word we're giving to it is capital F failure is not, or the fear of capital F failure is not the right one. What if it is instead an opportunity to find where things are not aligned internally and to actually resolve that misalignment internally? And so if you see it that way, you will realize that there are always things that are misaligned. You're not going to avoid that. And if your job is to actually work on resolving the misaligned areas of your life or of your business, and that by resolving those challenges, the reward is that you get different challenges to solve or to resolve, then that's actually okay. Now, do I always think that way? No. Because I always go back to, this thing's going to fall apart every summer, by the way. Every time I go on vacation, I have the fear of this capital F failure just sneaking in on me and just surprising me. And surprise, your entire thing is gone. But I actually saw it, and I leaned into it a few times, and I said, what terrifies me? Wait, we're quite big. We don't have a health and safety culture that I value, that I respect. That's an oil and gas thing. I want to build a health and safety department in this organization in order to make sure that we take care of the health and safety of our employees, and to make sure that we don't wake up one morning and through an act of negligence or through an act of not having given attention to this matter, we find that a fire has robbed us of our futures and our customers of their clothes and put us in a bad light where we've zalamna, where we've fallen short of expectations.
Yeah.
Right? And so, for example, that's one example of like I had a fear, a capital F failure fear. And I resolved it by building a health and safety department. And now, if you ask me, am I confident that our factory has good fire safety systems, that we have the right processes, that we have the right security? The answer is yes, 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 yes. But if you ask me before that moment of like fear, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
So what is my relationship with it? I lean into it. I'm not immune to it. And it generally takes me about 4 days of vacation to realize that I'm experiencing it.
Interesting.
So it doesn't go away, even though I always arrive at the conclusion, wait, I need to resolve this tension. Where is it?
Yeah.
Why is it starting to creep up on me? And why is it occupying so much mental space when I'm meant to be free and on vacation?
But what you did that was, from my opinion, that was smart is, and this is something I'm learning as well recently and like going through, is coming at these things from a place of curiosity, not judgment. You know, not saying like, oh, this should have happened, whatever. Be like, okay, this is a big F failure here. Why is it a big F failure? What are the reasons behind it? What can I do to not let that happen, which is what it forced you to do. It forced you to be proactive rather than reactive, which I think a lot of times in our life as humans, we typically are reactive, not proactive. We have to get slapped in the face, like, oh, I'm awake. I can't be awake, you know. I can't be awake in advance.
Like, I'll summarize what you said, because I think, you know, I thought about this out loud now. I've never verbalized it before. But the way I'll summarize it is this through multiple experiences I've had. It's whenever the emotion comes up, the first question is, what may be true about this? This is a word I took from a book called The Undoing Project. It's by Michael Lewis, and it's about Daniel Kahneman and Amos
Daniel Kahneman is
Tversky.
great, yeah.
Yeah, it's about Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky and how they like turned the world just with that paradigm of what may be true about this. And then the second thing is to ask why, why, and to resolve the tension that comes up and not judging the answer.
Exactly.
Why. And then if you do those two things, whenever there's a signal of fear, of concern, of anxiety is the signal, you end up, if you're honest with yourself, kind of like dissolving the tension by just shining a light on it. It's when they tell you, like, when you're meditating, don't judge it, just like experience it, let it happen, and then see it for what it is. I don't know how to do the meditative part of it, but I know the intellectual part of it, which is like, okay, what's true about this? Why? Okay, and then it just kind of dissolves, and you realize that it wasn't really what you thought it was, and how you experienced it is not really what it means for you, or what it was.
Exactly. It all comes down to as a guest on my podcast recently said, the meaning we attach to that event. You know, me and you can have the same thing, but to me it could be traumatic. For you, it could be like, oh, just another day, and can fall off you. Jad, for my last two questions, these are questions I ask all my guests. So first of all, looking back at your life, when I ask you the question, either personally or professionally, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
I don't experience pride frequently. So I can't tell you that there's one thing I'm very proud of. Really, I really can't tell you the one thing. I can tell you many small things. I mean, if you think about the world of gratitude, it's not the big things that you're grateful for, it's all the small things. And so when Washmen became successful, and we finally kind of got out of this world of fear of like being worthless financially, I kind of realized that one of the biggest things that I benefited from was a very good education, and that I had the opportunity to be educated. And I mentioned to you that I'm Lebanese originally, and that Lebanon has been going through some tough times. So I just financially help people because I can. And I make it a point to do so. I don't know who they are. They don't know who I am. The money is given to my family, and then they manage that. I want to keep an emotional distance because I don't want to make an identity out of it
fair.
where I know who I helped, because that's not the point. The point is
to just help.
Right. And you know, I learned that from Franklin Templeton. I read a book called Richer, Wiser, Happier. And Franklin Templeton was one of those people that said, you know, if you just, when you have even when you have or you don't have the means, what's the word? It's not charity. It's generosity.
Being of
always
service.
Generosity always rewards you more than you think, rewards you more than you think you're helping someone else with. And so for me, that as a principle has been I'm very proud of it, because I don't feel like it was innate to me.
Mm-mm.
So I'm proud of the fact that I allow, even by the way, when we didn't have means, I used to help. But now that we are more financially comfortable, I still make it a point. It's in the budget.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah, but I think that's something to be very proud of. The fact that you are you're actually helping people, man, and like giving. It doesn't matter if you know the person, don't know the person. You're doing a good thing just to do a good thing, and you were doing that before when times were tough, and you're doing it now.
Yeah.
So that's something to be proud of for sure.
To summarize
You
it
know?
this way, we mentioned earlier the fact that we felt we didn't deserve the circumstances we have.
Yes.
But you know what's the flip side of it is many people don't deserve the circumstances they find themselves in, even
On
though
the
they're
other
not
side,
positive.
that's true. Very
And
true.
so, yes, the world, deals you cards and you have to manage, and I expect everyone to be a fighter. But at the end of the day, not everyone's been given a chance, and there is injustice in the world, and there are robberies in the world. And what happened in the Lebanese banking system was a robbery from the pockets of many. Luckily enough, our family managed to sustain it, but there are members of our extended family that didn't. And what fault of their own is it that their generational wealth was swallowed by a bank?
Yeah.
It's not. And that happened to many other families.
Yeah.
And people who were of, hardworking families that had means and that were upper middle class all of a sudden find themselves completely wiped out, and they're in circumstances that are uncomfortable. Fine, we're not going to help them, fight the battle on all fronts, but if for health purposes they need help, I find that I take pride in the fact that I helped on that front.
100%. Yeah.
And so that's it. That's really the main thing. Is I put others ahead of myself on those levels.
You were of service to people. I think that's what you're trying to say.
Right,
that's what you're proud of. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Being of service.
I wanted to help people, and I'm being of service to people regardless of my status or my stature. And from my last question, Jad, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today? You've given us a lot of great ones, but let's see what you want to round us off with for the day.
The lesson. I don't know. I'm not going to give advice. I hate giving advice.
It's a message, not a lesson. A message.
Okay, I'll tell you the message. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about this specific question. What are the things that you do that you attribute your success to, when in fact, if you ask yourself the question, am I successful because of this or in spite of this? What are those things? Because going back to what we were discussing earlier, there's a lot of things we make an identity out of, and there's a lot of things we attribute our personality and our successes to. But in fact, sometimes you kind of question it, and you realize, I'm not successful because of this. I've actually been successful in spite of this. So what are those things? And I think resolving that question is part of living a life well lived, to be honest.
100%, because that's how you get aligned. You find true alignment with your values, what you believe, and what's mine, what's not. And like you said, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, that distinction is super important, because I need to connect those dots. I need to go back, connect those dots. What was the story? Because I need that context to make take that next step or my next decision.
To evolve.
Thank you very much. To evolve, exactly.
And so, and then there's another statement. Maybe you asked me for one, but I'll say it. I want to give another thing. There's a guy called Chris Begg. I think he's a public market investor, and he has this acronym called PIPER, PIPER, which is persistent, incremental progress, eternally repeated. And the idea, and the reason this is useful, is that ultimately, even in resolving these tensions and so on, but a lot of people think that success is like this one big thing that you do, or these moments of genius or opportunity that you just grasp. But in fact, if we look at the story of Washmen, it's in fact the hundreds of thousands of small decisions that we took, that
the non-sexy things.
Right. The things in the background that were actually just a little bit better than what we did yesterday. And so, I had never verbalized it, but when I heard the word PIPER, and I said, this will stick. And it stuck. And so, PIPER, everything is PIPER. So what are the areas in life that you just need to do a little bit better on tomorrow than today, that would actually yield you a lot of results.
100%.
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think that's
So thinking in Piper terms rather than moments of genius.
Yeah, and I love how you framed it in that way, because I think a lot of times, like you said, we remember the highlights. The stage, the awards,
the origin story.
Exactly, yeah.
The entrepreneur of the year, whatever that is.
Yeah, exactly. But we don't remember the every day, that little thing, like, oh, I did a little bit more here, a little bit more there. And I know it's so hard for us as people because we're very impatient, but these thousands of little things, the compounding effect, like you said, could be, game changing. Jad, man, I want to say thank you so much, man, for coming on the show today. This has been so much fun. I've learned so much about fucking laundry and like how you built the systems and the ethos you have.
It's funny, I feel like I haven't said enough.
Well, with rounds, I'm sure there'll be a round two at some point. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, man. If people want to work with you, reach out with you guys, try Washmen, where can we find you?
Yeah, Washmen app. Just go on Google, Washmen, and Apple Store, Android Store. Washmen. You'll find us there.
Everything else is going to be pretty self-explanatory.
And my email is jad@washmen.com if you want to ask me any questions.
Awesome. Perfect,
Cheers.
man. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps. Pod on all channels. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. I appreciate it. And that's another episode in the bag, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, podcasting is like this massive jigsaw puzzle, and my job is to help you find that missing piece. So if you're someone who's looking to launch their own podcast or take their podcast to the next level, you can book a call today and let's get started. TikTok.